Well, good morning, CPAC GB. Good morning. Good morning, London. It's wonderful to be with you today, and it's wonderful to see so many of our American friends in town. It's wonderful to see so many of our American allies in town. You know, I was recently in Washington, and one of President Trump's advisors turned to me, and he said something profound. He said, you know, I just visited London for the first time in 20 years. And he said, I was completely shocked, not just because of the mass immigration, not just because of the open borders, not just because of the record taxes and the insane energy policy, but because of the extent to which your leaders seem to hate your own people. And he has a point. Our political class in Westminster has been hijacked by politicians who are completely addicted to suicidal empathy. Politicians who are now so obsessed with showing empathy to illegal immigrants, to refugees, to Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs, to criminals, to people on welfare, that they are destroying our country from within. They are committing national suicide. And that is why I want to begin my speech by thanking President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and the U.S. State Department. I want to thank them for calling out what is really happening in this country, and indeed much of Europe. What did they call it? Civilizational erasure. Civilizational erasure caused by mass uncontrolled immigration, open borders, a truly disastrous energy policy, record high taxes, and draconian authoritarian cuts to our free speech and free expression so that the British people cannot even challenge what is being imposed on them from above. Take immigration. You know, I got in trouble recently on a very popular radio show in this country because I dared to point out that things are now so bad in Britain that many British people are leaving. They're leaving these islands and they are being replaced by millions of people who are not just coming from outside of Britain, but are coming from outside of Western civilization. Last year, 250,000 British people, about half of them young British people, left these islands for good, and they were replaced by around 800,000 migrants from radically different cultures and countries around the world, from Eritrea and Sudan to Afghanistan. In fact, 90% of all migration into Britain today comes from outside of European nations. Now, what we're doing, I said on this radio show, is we are replacing our best and our brightest with goat herders. Ooh, the radio host said, who happened to be the sister of Boris Johnson. Ooh, I'm not sure you can say that, Matthew. You're right. I said, I'm sorry, I apologize. Because what I should have said is drug-dealing goat herders. Now think about this. You can go home tonight, you can Google it. Our politicians now care so little about the British people that they're not only importing millions of low-skill, low-wage workers from outside of Europe who have been shown to be a net fiscal cost by every major study, but they are also importing illiterate goat herders from Iraq who went on to terrorize a small town in Wales by dealing heroin and cocaine. And let me tell you, conference, there is nothing I hate more than drug dealers. There is nothing I hate more than drug dealers. Only a political class that hates its own people would allow that to happen. Only a political class that hates its own people would allow hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants to stream across our borders on the small boats, despite knowing that they have included ISIS sympathizers, rapists, murderers, and then forcing their own people to pay £15 billion for a policy that they never even voted for in the first place, while also calling them racist and far-right and extremist if they dare complain about it. Do you know what far right means today? in a world where the left has expanded these terms to such a degree that they are now completely meaningless. It means paying your taxes, respecting the rule of law, looking after your family, and loving your country. Now, all of this chaos that we see in Britain today is why I decided to leave my job as a well-paid, tenured university professor to enter politics and try and help save our country before it's too late. Because I don't know about everybody else in this room and everybody who's watching online, but I've come to the view that we only have 1 or 2 general elections left to save this country. Time is running out. Just look at what will happen on these islands if we do not win. Over the next 74 years, that's one lifetime. One lifetime. As I point out in my book, these islands will be completely, permanently, irreversibly transformed. If you've got small children today, they will see it. The share of the UK's population that is white British on current trends will fall from 74% today to just 33% by the end of the current century, as it already is in our capital city here in London. The share of people in the UK who were born overseas or who are the immediate children of the foreign-born will soar from 19% to more than 60%, meaning that soon a majority of people in this country will only have a very weak link to our culture, our history, and our way of life. And the share of people following Islam, it will fall from 1 in every 17 people today, about 6%, to just 1 in every 4. Possibly 1 in every 3 if we maintain mass, uncontrolled migration from outside European nations. Nobody voted for this. Nobody asked for it. And only very few people want to see it. And yet it is still being imposed on us, which raises the obvious question, what do we do about it? Well, I'll say it as it is. We need to replace the political class in Westminster before they replace us. Now, the reason I went into politics is not just because I wanted to fight for the same freedoms that my grandfather fought for in the jungles of Burma in the Second World War, and it's not just so that I can honor my mother, who worked round the clock to raise 2 boys, and make it possible for me to become the first person in my family to go to university. No, I gave up my career and jumped into politics so I could try and speak up for the decent majority of millions of hard-working, tax-paying, law-abiding, patriotic British people on these islands whose ancestors built this country, who love this country, who play by the rules, but who are still treated as second-class citizens in their own country by the very people who are supposed to protect them and preserve our country. You know, I just finished a national book tour of more than 60 cities, towns, and villages across this country. And wherever I went, people from that decent majority told me exactly the same thing. I want my country back. Well, so do I. But if we want our country back, then we're going to have to fight like hell, because there is a war going on in this country, and it's a war between those of us who love Britain and want to bring it back, and a radicalized fringe minority who dominate the institutions, who feel ashamed of Britain and our history, who are obsessed with victimhood and grievance, and who hate this country so much they want to replace it with something else entirely. If we want to win this war, we're going to need to re-establish 2 things that are glaringly absent in Westminster. The first is national preference. The belief stretching back to ancient Greece that if you do not put your own people first, your nation will not survive. Or what Americans call America First conservatism. That means slashing all foreign aid until we have public services that work for the British people. Don't you find it utterly outrageous, like I do, that we are currently treating the British people in hospital car parks and corridors, that we have doctors in the National Health Service in this country who specialize in something called corridor care, while every year we send £13 billion overseas to fund cycling lanes in Mexico, eco-farms in Nepal, and obesity programs in China. You know what I say? Fix Britain first before helping the rest of the world. National preference means no more foreign aid and visas for nations that refuse to take back Pakistani Muslim grooming gang members. We are in such an absurd position in this country that we just gave Pakistan £111 million to buy condoms, and yet they refuse to take back their own grooming gang predators. We need leaders in this country who will play hardball. And by the way, that also means deporting every dual national groomer in this country and giving the rest mandatory life sentences without the possibility of parole. Suicidal empathy is allowing these gangs to rape your own children and do next to nothing about it because you don't want to offend certain communities. National preference means ending the £10.1 billion that we are currently spending on welfare payouts for people who are not even British. And we should spend that money on building new schools, hospitals, homes, and on the national defence of our own people. A serious country does not refuse requests from our oldest and closest ally, the United States of America, to strengthen our national defence while at the same time wasting £25 billion on welfare and foreign aid for people who are not even British at all. That is insane. That is completely and utterly insane. National preference means reversing the Boris wave of migration, which after 2021 saw Boris Johnson and the Tories betray this country by flooding it with millions of low-skilled, low-wage migrants who are now set to cost the British taxpayer, because they take more out of the system than they put in, £600 billion. £600 billion. Now, left-wing politicians say it's not fair to reverse the Boris wave. But I ask them this: how is it fair, during the worst cost of living crisis since the Second World War, to force your own people to pay £600 billion for a policy they never even asked for in the first place? That is not fair at all. That is how you destroy the social contract in a country. National preference means not allowing anybody to stay in Great Britain unless they can speak English to a very high standard, unless they are shown to be a net contributor to our national economy, and unless they have a clean criminal record. These things are not hard. Anybody else should simply not have their visas renewed. National preference also means not giving social housing paid for by British taxpayers to foreign nationals, like the First Lady of Sierra Leone, who was just found, when she's not in a presidential mansion in Freetown with tennis courts and helipads, was found to be renting out the council flat that the government had given her, paid for by taxpayers, or giving social housing to the family of the new leader of ISIS in Somalia. A serious nation would not give homes to people who hate us. It would give them instead to the 1.3 million British people who are currently sitting on the housing register, to the 3,000 British military veterans who are currently waiting for a home, to the many young British people who are now leaving these islands because they've rightly concluded that the British state is never going to put its own people first. National preference means not asset stripping low-income countries by stealing their doctors and their nurses just to make London Liberals feel good about themselves, while every year the British state rejects 10,000 British kids who want to become doctors, who want to work in the NHS, because they think, because the British state think, because our politicians think it's too expensive to invest in our own people. Looking after your own means standing up firmly to those who want to destroy our country from within. I don't know about you, but I'm frankly embarrassed about the fact that the UK only just this week decided to ban the Iranian Revolutionary Guards. But don't stop there. Don't stop there. Let's go further. Let's ban the Muslim Brotherhood in this country. Let's ban the more than 80 Sharia courts in this country. Let's ban cousin marriage in this country. Let's ban foreign funding for mosques in this country. Let's ban Islamist preachers in this country. Let's ban the British state from giving taxpayer-funded homes to senior members of Hamas and Al-Qaeda. Let's actually put the British people first, because do you know what our enemies call this? They call it welfare jihad. They call it welfare jihad. They are literally laughing at us because we are funding the very people who want to destroy our civilization from within. And you know, I saw the threat that's rapidly coming down the track in this country up close when I ran for election to Parliament in Manchester with the Reform Party in a seat that has a 30% Muslim vote. Now, we defeated Labour in Greater Manchester, and I'm very, very proud of that. We finished second. But we watched the Islamo-Green Party use Muslim clan networks to rig and win that by-election. They campaigned in different languages. They downplayed Islamist extremism. They intimidated voters at the polling stations. They mainstreamed anti-Semitism. One independent report found that illegal family voting, which is what happens when a father or a husband tells their family how to vote, took place in 68% of all polling stations. Think about this, that was just one district. But if we don't change course, if we don't win this political battle, then that will soon be an entire part of our political system. A large swathe of British democracy will be captured by sectarianism. And the truth is this, we will not save our country unless we fix our democracy. We will not save our country unless we fix our democracy. That means ending the mainstreaming of postal voting in this country. That means withdrawing. It means withdrawing the right of 2.5 million people in Britain who are not British but can vote in British elections. It means stamping out illegal family voting. It means taking back control of our democracy. And the second thing we need to do if we're going to win this fight, the second thing we're going to need to re-establish in British politics is popular sovereignty. We need to get back to the idea in this country that politicians are there to serve the people, not the other way around. Yes, we need to win the next general election, but that is just the start. Americans know that that is just the start, because what we will also need to do is go to war with the deep state, with the civil service, with the blob, with the establishment, with the institutions that one recent study in this country found that 75% of all bureaucrats in the institutions in this country are on the political left. 75%. That means we need to strengthen executive power. It means we need to slash the size of the civil service. It means we need to appoint more people from outside of the state bureaucracy. It means we need to dismantle the undemocratic quangos, quasi-non-governmental organizations. We need to root out all diversity, equity, and inclusion policies from government departments that, as we saw with the tragic murder of Henry Novak, what we saw is that DEI is now a code word for anti-white racism. Let's call it what it is. And it means giving democratically elected politicians in this country the power to sack civil servants who refuse to implement the policies that the people voted for at democratic elections. If you threaten to go on strike under a reform government, you will be fired. You will be removed from the state bureaucracy. Re-establishing popular sovereignty means leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, the ECHR. It means repealing Tony Blair's Human Rights Act, both of which are now used by an army of unelected, unaccountable lawyers to prevent the British people from taking back control of their own borders, of their own country, of their own laws, and prevents them from deporting illegal migrants and foreign criminals. Tony Blair once said he only cares about 3 words: education, education, education. Well, here are 3 words I care about: deport, deport, deport. I want the estimated 1.5 million illegal migrants in Britain removed from this country, and I want to see anybody who arrives in this country illegally immediately detained, ideally in Green Party or Labour Party areas, and then immediately deported. And it means taking back control, and I say this as a former recovering university professor who spent 20 years in higher education. It means taking back control of our schools and our universities that have been completely hijacked by radical ideologues. A nation that teaches its children to hate their own country is like a bouquet of flowers that is sitting in a vase. The nation looks beautiful for a while, but if you look closer, it's cut off from its roots and it is slowly dying, slowly withering away. We need an accurate, a balanced curriculum in this country that teaches our children to feel pride in who we are, that teaches them about the Industrial Revolution, about Magna Carta, about Winston Churchill, about the English language, about parliamentary democracy, about common law, about how we help to end slavery, and which rejects divisive, un-British theories like critical race theory or CRT, which are themselves racist against white people. Schools and universities should be politically neutral, but they have been hijacked by left-wing extremists. And it means transferring power back to the people. It means letting them speak freely by overturning the constant attack on free speech in this country. Did you know 30 people every day in this country are arrested for what they write on social media, like my good friend Lucy Connolly, who was held into prison for what she wrote on social media. We need to abolish all non-crime hate incidents in this country. We need to ensure we oppose digital ID in this country. We need to root out unnecessary hate laws in this country. We need to allow people to pray silently outside abortion clinics if they want in this country. And we need to scrap a dangerous new definition of anti-Muslim hostility that is about to be imposed on our schools and our universities and our civil service, and which will be used. It will be used to control what we can say about Islam. It will be used to control what we can ask, what we can debate, and what we can challenge when it comes to one of the most significant developments in this country for many, many years. The history of England, it used to be said, is a history of liberty. But that history is now being forgotten by our political class in Westminster that is now far more interested in trying to control what we say and what we think than allowing that liberty to thrive and prosper. If conservatives, if small c conservatives are serious about saving Britain, then this is what it will take: a full frontal campaign to reassert national preference in this country and reassert popular sovereignty in this country. And that means making a strong case for what we stand for, not simply what we are against. I stand for meritocracy, not divisive identity politics. I stand for the rule of law, not two-tier injustice. I stand for equality before the law, not treating minorities more favorably than the decent majority. I stand for true diversity of thought, not a stifling diversity that is not interested in people who happen to hold conservative or gender-critical beliefs. And I stand for free speech, for truth, for science, and for reason, for the English language, for controlled borders, for manageable change, for a home, a nation that looks and feels like something we know and like something our ancestors built. For all of the things that make a nation state possible to begin with and make it possible to endure. I want to fight for the hard-working majority of people in this country. for the people who are not going to be won over by the old language about left and right, but who are going to be much more receptive if you ask them a different question. Do you want to bring Britain back? Do you want to see this country rise again? Because what a truly compelling, positive, and inspiring story that would be. You know, it was once said that the British lose every battle except the last. It might not have felt like that last night. Well, the last battle is rapidly approaching. And it is up to us to ensure that the British people are now brought together behind one movement so that we can actually win this battle and turn this country that we all love around before it really is too late. Thank you very much.